Hello and welcome back to the first episode of the Animation Industry Podcast in 2024. My name is Terry and I am still your host, and this is now the 6th year this podcast has been running. Now, I'd just like to shout out to my Patreon for a second, which helps keep this podcast running. It pays for things like Zoom to chat with guests, hosting fees to stream on places like Spotify, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff, and of course the artists who created the music and graphics for this podcast. So please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber in 2024 if you enjoy this podcast. The link is in the description of this chat. This episode features the dynamic duo behind Yonk, a 3D animation studio based in the Netherlands which uses VR sculpting software to achieve their super squishy, very melty, and a little bit creepy clay-like style that they have become known for. The duo is made up of Niels van der Donk and Victoria Young. Donk and Young make, or Young and Donk make Yonk. They dive into how much hard work it took to go full-time with their studio and to work with brands like Amazon, Nike, Spotify, and Bloomberg. So without further ado, let's jump in. Hello, Niels and Victoria. How's it going over there?
Good. Niels just interrupted you so rudely.
I was
So sorry.
We just heard like the robot voice.
We
And like,
took the robot voice and Niels was trying to imitate her.
The robot
Recording.
voice being like, I'm now
Yeah.
recording. Watch out. That's fine. Whatever. I don't care.
We're
How are you guys?
good.
How are you guys?
We're great. How are you, Terry? How are you
I'm
doing?
good. It's a nice sunny day actually here. We've had some really cold, snowy days, but today's sunny. So I wish I wasn't indoors. I wish I was outdoors where it's 2 degrees.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm excited to chat with you guys. Maybe you can just start us off by saying, like, can you describe your visual style to people who haven't seen it before?
Yeah. Let's do it.
it's 5 minutes.
I think like our style, our Yonky style is basically kind of like a mix between like sort of clay-like, splodgy, creepy, loopy characters. That can be, yeah,
I
like
would
very
say that's accurate.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting
Creepy,
that right, but
splodgy, bloopy clay characters. Yeah.
clay-like characters.
With vibrant colors.
Exactly.
And unconventional character proportions, maybe.
Yes. Terry, you
And
got it.
I'm your agent.
Yeah.
When
You're on the team. You're done. We're done.
I mean,
Imperfection.
I mean, I don't know when I first saw your style, but I immediately fell in love with it because of all those things, and because also like I'm a stop motion animator. I work with clay a lot, and it's like clay on drugs or something, almost like your style.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you two got together and decided, you know what, we're not going to go to the conventional animation route. We're not going to like work for a studio. We're going to create this weird, creepy style, and then hopefully people and big brands like Amazon or like Nike pay us to keep doing this. Like, where did this come from?
It is really wild.
Yeah.
A bit like that. Yeah, so I guess it started really when I'm from the UK originally, and Niels is from the Netherlands. And I came to the Netherlands for like an exchange, like when I was studying, and I was studying fine arts. I met Niels in one class, and he was studying graphic design. And then we just hit it off. We actually are a couple as well. We always have to tell people that. It's like, it feels like a disclaimer, like we are together.
You hit it off in more than one way.
Exactly. But I feel like we always like shared kind of like similar ideas, even though we're from these two very different backgrounds. So we thought let's start a studio. We were both working, and we were like, I mean, like many people want to start doing.
So you graduated
freelance.
school, you both were working in like design or something like that.
Yeah.
And you were like,
so
this sucks.
Yeah, Niels was working. Niels was
No.
working design.
It wasn't like it sucked, but like we just really want. I mean, obviously everyone wants to do their own stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like we were actively like we want to do something completely different, and we want to do it together.
Yeah.
Like really different is what we studied for, basically. Because like, yeah, like you don't. Honestly, I was really at first we wanted to start like a graphic design studio
Yeah,
together
which
because I was like, I thinking you can learn graphic design, forget the fine arts. We're just gonna do graphic design
I'll just
together.
pick up
We're
kerning.
we're
I
gonna
know.
yeah,
It'll be
we're
fine.
gonna start a studio. We're gonna call it what is it, Studio Highway,
Super highways.
Super Highway.
It's a very pretentious name back in the
Yeah,
day.
and
But
then
yeah, but basically, like we couldn't like what he didn't want to become a fine artist, and I didn't want to become a graphic designer. So we needed this thing that was like sort of middle way between these two kind of disciplines, but was also new and exciting for us to learn. So we like thought, well, we discovered 3D and we were like, okay, this is a cool industry. Let's let's dive in.
let's just do it. Yeah.
Let's just do it. And then
So
we
wait. So like
yeah, sorry,
you were
you
both
go.
working and then you just decided to both quit at the same time and start
Oh
this.
no, sorry. Yeah, we did it. We did like a couple of years of just like working in like both of our jobs were like part-time. So we did like
Hmm.
part-time work and then every single day that we had off would be like a Yonk day. And we would
Wow.
just like, yeah, it was pretty intense.
Yeah, that takes a super commitment. Like what kept you going where you're like, you weren't seeing any payoff right away. You're just like you just
Oh
believed it.
yeah.
And like why didn't you stop?
Just excitement.
Yeah, I
Because
think
I mean that was also why we chose like to dive into 3D because there's so much to explore, especially when you have no background in 3D. And
yeah.
then so for literally every like you have to imagine every day for us was just like, wait, how do we opening up Blender and then it's like how do I give this color or whatever, you know? And it's kind of all the stuff that we do still references back then where we had no clue what we're doing. Like the eyes are always like black because we just like threw like one material on it that was as smooth as possible because we didn't know how to model an eye or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's like it was just but yeah, it was just because it was super exciting and then it makes it super easy to get into something and do it in your free time, right?
So your style is
Yeah.
kind of formed by the limitations of like your knowledge, I guess, if that makes sense. It's so
Yeah.
funny because like I open up Blender and I look at it, I'm like, I don't want to learn any of this. Goodbye. And I close it. Like you were like,
Yeah,
oh, there's so much to explore here.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand that feeling though. I mean, there was a long time, I think, before we even thought of Yonk, where I had to use 3D programs for school, and I'd be like, "This is, I just don't understand." And then as soon as we started Yonk, it was like, oh, "Okay, let's give it a go." Especially Blender because it was
Yeah.
free, and you
But
know,
it was still hardcore. We were also
yeah,
the same like you, being like, wow, that's a lot of buttons. That's why we got into VR sculpting at first, because like then you can just skip bypass so many steps of learning 3D modeling the traditional way. And obviously that again, that's also it makes it so much easier to do in your free time because you just put a VR headset on and you're just sculpting. So fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I
yeah,
definitely wanted to ask you about VR. Okay, so you for a couple of years you were learning Blender, you were developing your style, and then like what was the instigating moment for you guys to quit your part-time jobs and go full in on Yonk? Because like, it's one thing to like have fun in a program and create stuff, and it's another thing to like take a big risk, especially because if you're both a
yeah.
couple and you're both in the same industry and you both quit your jobs and you both go in the same thing, that's like so many
Mhm.
eggs in one basket.
Yeah, it's a lot of eggs.
Yeah.
There's
But
so many eggs. It's a
yeah,
small basket.
you can't hold it.
Can't we can't the basket cannot hold it.
But it was super conscious. Like we built it
Yeah.
up. Like it took so long to get to that point because we did it constantly. We were working like after at some point we started getting client work whilst we still had our part-time jobs. So we were doing those like in the evenings or like over the weekends and just like have a meeting during your lunch break or whatever. Because I was working from home, so that was a bit easier.
Where are these clients
And
coming from? Where did the first client come from? Just from like seeing your stuff online?
yeah, just Instagram. I
Just
think
and
it was. I think Max Siedentolf was the first person to
Interesting.
ever.
Did you
yeah.
notice you reached like a certain amount of followers before you got a client?
Oh,
Or was it
it
like you
was
attend?
it was really like random. I feel like what tends to happen, and probably this is a lot of things for like directors of like advertisements and art directors, is that they're looking for like something that people haven't seen before, or maybe like something a little bit weird. And I think Max always is trying to search out kind of like new kind of strange approaches and stuff. He's quite good in that way. So when he approaches, we really didn't have like a following or anything. We were just barely kind of getting started. And he came with like kind of a simple ask, I guess, of just making some typeface for a music video. It's called like Pour the Milk song.
Yeah.
We had to make like a milky typeface, like something that we didn't even think we could do with this kind of software or like the virtual reality that we were using. And then we just did it. And then it kind of started to like snowball from that moment. So I guess the milky typeface started like
Wow.
No, and then also we did like it's nice that campaign.
It's nice, definitely, yeah.
And then basically we were at that point we were constantly just being like, okay, we're making a little bit of money with it. Like definitely not enough for something to live off. We did crypto for a bit as well, like NFTs, so we could build a little bit of cash with that.
We were those people.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like really...
I know about this. I wanted to ask you how successful that run went as well, because you're not still doing it.
No.
No, but it was super fun, but like it was also an experiment for us. And it was financially really helpful for us. It also gave us a boost to be comfortable enough to go full time.
Yeah, and I feel like me and Neil's always like quite interested about like what new things are happening, and because that was so new, and this was like really like an eye-opening moment for digital art, we were like, well, we could just try it. And I mean, it went pretty well. People really were receptive to it. We still get offers today, but we tend to just sort of ignore them. Because I don't know really know what it turned into in the end, the kind of NFT. I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
But
so we don't do it anymore.
No.
Right.
But then at some point, but basically we were just like waiting for a moment to be like, okay, when can we do this full time? Because you don't know. And then we again did it in steps. So actually, Fuki first went full time Yonk. She had a job as a barista, so it was a bit. I mean, felt a bit more easier to quit, I guess, for you, because it's not. I mean, she makes great latte art. She makes latte art for me.
But it definitely wasn't my calling.
No.
Yeah.
But and then so you did it first, and then I think you went full time, and then after half a year of Vicky being full time, then I was also like, okay, now it's comfortable enough for me also to go full time. So it was still like very thought out, I guess. It wasn't like that we were just let's do this, you know?
Yeah, it wasn't like we didn't really, I mean, it was still a risk, but it wasn't like the biggest risk when we took it.
No.
So we'd already kind of saved up for this moment.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's really cool that you both decided to go all in on Yonk and like see it through and like do it in stages. Random question, Victoria. Did you, it's like a cliche of like artist who's a barista wanting to like do something bigger. Were you ever approached with somebody like, wow, this latte art is like phenomenal? Have you ever wanted to like
one of Neil's leaving for the story, I don't know why, but he was coming back in a minute. But
he was so offended he left.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just a bit hot.
One of the best stories I ever had before I was a barista, I worked in a bar, and in the bar I was serving drinks so fast for a Christmas party of like a law firm that the guy came over and he was like, you have to work for us. Like, you are so good at making drinks. I want to hire you for our law firm. So that's the only ever offer I've had out of the service industry.
Was he super drunk because you made him so many drinks?
Yeah, it was his Christmas party. He gave me his card and everything, though. It's like serious. And I was like, no, I think I was like 19 at the time. I was like, I'm not going to go.
Oh, wow.
Just, yeah.
Okay. So, okay.
That's the only offer.
So, so how long have you actually been full-time, both of you, yonking?
Since probably around 2021. That was when, because COVID was still working, right? Yeah, so I think 2020, or maybe 2022?
No, 22, yeah.
No.
Yeah. Because we signed the contract, like we signed Yonk as a company in 2019.
Yeah.
At the beginning of 2019, and then the whole year, and then the end of, so like halfway 2020 you went full time, and then towards the end I went full time. So 2020.
2020? No, it's I don't know.
I
Was
mean, I
2000
saw an article about like Yonk is a new studio and it was dated 2020. So, but
Yeah,
okay, so basically a couple of years full time. And what does that mean?
yeah.
Like you're like working full time, like 9 to 5 kind of like jobs and like okay, so because I know other freelance artists who are kind of like doing similar styles, but I wanted to know like it's usually like one person coming out with a unique style and like getting clients. How is it with two people? Like, does this mean you're able to do like double the work, get double the clients, but also like when you don't have work, it's double the expenses? Like how I'm asking 500 questions right now. How consistent has the work been for both of you?
I mean, we've been pretty lucky, especially last year, that last year was pretty consistent. We also worked with like a lot of big brands last year that
Yeah,
sort
what
of
the heck?
I know. What the heck? No, it's crazy. That sort of highlighted us and stuff. It was, yeah, a bit of a wild year last year. So it was, I feel like last year was kind of one of our busiest yet. And then I, between us, I guess, for instance, like about the workload, I guess that like, I mean, I haven't really spoken to a single person who does this. I mean, how much workload? We just sort of halve it, I guess. Maybe we
Yeah.
do the job of one between two.
Yeah, no, but you for the longest, I mean, it's really, we just do it depending on like what the person is itself is interested in doing. So like sometimes, like we have moments where we both like are working on one individual character together, like we constantly switch it around, or it's like we both make us like a whole range of characters for an animation or whatever, and then they still fit in the same world, and then we do editing on each other's. Or sometimes it's like one of us is doing character creation or world creation, and the other person is just purely focused on animation. So we just, and the other way around. So like we constantly switch it up basically. It's
Yeah,
like really it sounds really absurd, but it just really works for us to yeah.
to just keep on switching. And I
Yeah.
think for like workflow, we tend to like have particular interest more in more things. So like I'll probably a little bit more interested in animation, maybe.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Uh,
Um,
I always correct you when you're wrong.
yeah. Then Neil's a little bit more into like geometry nodes and coding right now. So we tend to, when we get approached for a job, we tend to, take these separate parts and we'll do kind of those jobs between us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that answers. Does that answer a
yeah, of
question?
course.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I was curious about like how consistent the work is, but you said you had a big year last year. So how does, you don't have an agent or an agency or whatever. So like how does a big client like, I don't know, Nickelodeon, who you worked with, they just reach out to
Mm,
your DMs on Instagram or your email or something? Somebody finds you
Email.
somehow and they're like, hey, we want to hire you guys. Can you do this thing? And you're like, yeah, perfect.
yeah. So actually, Nickelodeon is really funny because Max Heaton,
Yeah.
who hired us for the first job, he was the director of the Nickelodeon
Wow,
shorts.
Yeah.
wow, wow.
So
Okay,
he
it's
said, I know.
but a
He just
different, a
came
different
back.
like out of the blue example, like I don't know, like Nike or
I
something.
know, I
Be on
know,
there,
random.
like
No, but most time it's like it's really random. It's like you get an email and it's either like we never ask really as well. And
No.
they just yeah, just people that like really yeah, insane companies. And then sometimes it's like because like someone that works at a company like really likes our work and then gets recommended internally, I guess. And then
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like now we have like we have a good relationship with some people that like that come back and or think about us when they have a project. So it's kind of nice that it's always really nice as well because sometimes we find it surprising where our work can go.
yeah.
And like how it fit. I think when we first started, we thought we'd just be making illustrations and that'll be it. And then animation started to happen, and then more and more things. But then these types of jobs that we're doing, we're like, what? Like I don't like also doing workshops and stuff like this. This we didn't even think about when we first started, but it makes complete sense now. We do them.
Um,
So yeah.
You mentioned, people are looking for something that people have never seen before. Do you think at some point, like maybe 10 years down the road, when you've done every brand in the world, you will be like, you won't be like that
We're
new
still,
fresh,
we
that
have a
new
list
and
of those. We're still like ticking them.
We're just going through the whole commercial world. Like
exactly. You won't be like, do you ever have I mean, you're still fresh, but do you have a worry that you won't be the new and fresh thing that people are looking for anymore?
Yeah, of course. I mean, but I think that me and Niels, when we started Yonk, before we even found the VR sculpting, like our main aim was to just keep up with things like technology and keep up with whatever is fascinating for us. I think that was like actually in our It's Nice That first write-up, the one that you mentioned earlier, that we say that. And I remember looking back on that being like, what the hell? Like we just VR sculpts, like why are we trying to be a but actually it's these like the VR sculpting is now just a part of the process, but we try and keep developing and I can imagine the style will change over the years. Like I don't know if we'll be making like black-eyed little creatures forever. I think we'll just
Once you
keep
learn
on.
how to
Yeah, we still haven't learned how to put an eye in. We refuse. I think it'll just keep on. I mean, I don't think we have like a desperation to be relevant, let's say, but we're just happy if people are happy to hire us and happy to, as long as we can just keep on making stuff that we like.
We're just always just like figuring out new ways of like how to create work in general, just like to create something that's inside of our heads. And I think so like before it felt like almost a bit like a gimmick, the VR sculpting at some point, because we were always like, we're doing this VR sculpting, like, and it's super, super sick. And it's like still we use this every single day, but it's like it's not like the main thing. It's just like, oh yeah, we didn't know how to do 3D, so we went to VR sculpting. We didn't know how to do animation. We approached animation in like kind of like really different ways. We approach like texturing and stuff. So constantly, it's more like an 3D 3D like your 8-year-old cousin is trying to figure out 3D, but then do it in a cool way.
That's us. We're
That makes sense.
children.
I actually, I wanted to ask you about the VR thing because so many people have tried to like make it work over the years and it's never really like hit. But I feel like you guys are the first people, at least that I've seen, that have like cracked the code with like a really cool style out of VR. Like your stuff looks like gloopy and whatever that you can only kind of get from like VR sculpting. I feel like if you're trying to like hit that same style in Blender and Maya, it's like much more difficult. So like tell me about like the process of like using VR in your art, and like if that's I guess people are also kind of looking for that too, especially as VR is becoming more popular with like VR and games and stuff.
Yeah. I think that like I mean there's we'll send you afterwards all the people that use VR because there's quite a lot
Yeah, please do.
now. But I feel like it's I don't know wait, I've lost my train of thought. It's using it, it's like feels very natural in a weird way. I guess it kind of is like how you're manipulating clay for your claymation animations. It really feels like a replica of just messing around with clay. And like the fact that it can be so playful and intuitive is like something that we like instantly hit off with it. And I think that then informs the work as well. Like the fact that we can just be in this space and almost like doodle around and be a bit silly, like the outcome becomes like a version of that. Also, the fact that it's using your hands, so it's very gestural, meaning the characters can have like a lot of imperfections, a lot of kind of like qualities, like using real clay. So yeah, I feel like
It's like we just like kind of embrace that like it's way more easier to make like a little mistake or make something asymmetrical super fun in VR as well. It's something, yeah, asymmetrical stuff is also something goes a bit against the 3D principles at times, I feel.
Yeah.
It's way less functional, but like we just embraced all these like little things that come with VR sculpting. And because it was the thing that we started with in the beginning and we didn't even know how to do normal 2D modeling. That's why it becomes second nature for us, I guess.
So you
Yeah.
still use VR like modeling as a first step before you bring it into Blender, etc. What do you think is
Oh,
holding what do you think is holding people back from using VR? Like it's not taught in schools. It's not like is it the cost of like getting equipment? Is it like is there a high learning curve? Is it it's
I
just that
think
people, I don't know.
I think people are just super comfortable with if they know certain technique and they're really good at it, and then it's super hard to make a switch right to a different tool. It's
Yeah.
like when we do workshops, then we actually explain VR sculpting and stuff. And we recently went to Switzerland to a call, and like everyone for that with this in this case it was very much about like the difference between Blender and Cinema 4D, but also VR sculpting. And like you, if you're so used to sculpting in ZBrush or something, then it's so hard to. This is not the
Make the
same thing.
switch.
You need to work completely different, and you kind of have to start over in a sense. I think that's for some people really hard.
But the learning curve is super,
Yeah,
like it's so low. You can anyone can get into it. It's like
yeah,
it's so easy and makes so much sense when you're in there. It's really like quite a powerful tool. And they're now just upgrading it to make it better and better and better. So I don't know where it's gonna go, but it's crazy, yeah.
yeah.
How much so like you guys don't have a lot of like personal information out there. Like Yonk is like a very like how do I
We're
say
like social
you're like a
startups.
you're very like a visually brand like forward
Yeah.
style, if that makes sense. How I wanted to know like how important do you think that has been in like getting and maintaining clients? Like when they see you guys, they're like, oh, this is a professional studio, or they're like, oh, this is a couple of uh one is a barista and the other one's a like
Yeah, yeah,
do you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like how important is like the forward facing image of like Yonk towards
I
like getting
feel
clients and stuff.
yeah, I feel like I remember one of my friends said to me in London, like, oh, it's so nice what you've done with Yonk. It's really like a brand. And I was like, like it's a brand? I
That's
was
how
like,
I saw it. That's how I see it.
yeah, I really, and I was a bit confused because I just thought, well, it's just me and Niels having fun. And then I guess that like, I don't really know
We
how,
don't make a conscious choice to make it a brand,
yeah,
basically. And I don't think it's important as well. Like I
Mm.
know a lot of people always like you need to find your style and stick with it and do
yeah,
that. I think it's with like for if it comes down to like getting like work, if you do something like if you make one animation, like if we were to make an animation and we figure out a really really fun way to approach animation, I don't know. We're doing something with holograms or whatever. I don't know, but it doesn't look at all like what you would recognize something as Yonk or something. But I feel like it's way more important to make work that just excites people than to have a consistent style. Because then if someone, it's just a lottery. Like we always say with like Instagram, it's also like a lottery ticket. You can just create your own lottery ticket in a sense, and then you just put it up, and then with the hopes that someone sees that at the right time, that also has that gets really good energy from that work. Now I don't think it matters if you do it consistent. I mean, obviously it has benefits, but I don't think it's needs to be so consistent. Like I think it's more like someone can point at it and be like, I want that, but we want something or that in that sense, but then for I don't know.
yeah. I think it also helps that we're two people. Like, I think that like I don't know, like when you're talking about like people when they look at our work and they're like, oh, is it a studio or is it just two people or like, people fucking around? Um, but like we have it quite a lot when we go on Zoom and then people see we have a studio. We're not in it right now, but we have a studio.
We have an actual
An
studio.
actual studio that looks a bit more interesting than this white
I
wall,
mean, I can
which
see a
is just my
plant.
house. Yeah, there's a plant. I think it's like a dying plant, which is
I
really
see a
sad.
dying plant.
Really sad.
We're surrounded by
But
dying plants
the
inside.
studio has actually not dying plants, so way nicer. Sorry we couldn't be there.
That's
But
fine.
yeah, the clients are always like, oh, it's two of you, and oh, you have a studio, and like maybe quite
Like, what were you
surprised.
thinking? We were.
But I also think that people are just like quite surprised that it's a team, and the fact that yeah, two people can kind of create this one kind of world.
Yeah. I mean, it was something
So yeah,
surprising to me when I first learned about it, because it does seem like a single person's style, I
yeah.
guess, because it's so consistent. Okay, so
Mhm.
when you're posting on social media, like on Instagram, for instance, you kind of gave me like a list of like rules, like it has to be fresh, has to be interesting. If I go to your Instagram, like, is it just a mix of like what you think is fresh and interesting, or do you like create? You're like, okay, we haven't posted in a while. We got to feed the algorithm. We got to feed our followers some like kibble. Let's create something specifically for Instagram, or is it more like you're having fun and you're like, hey, look at this cool thing we did. Let's post it.
It's
Definitely the second.
definitely the second. Yeah, we definitely just think about things we want to do, and then the opportunity to share it is always nice, you know? Like there's a lot of things that we do that we don't share that kind of fail, or they're tests and they're like, we're like, oh, well, it's nice. But when we come down to like posting on Instagram, it's just something the week before we've decided to work out. And then a lot of the times what we do is we just sort of like give an insight into like the process of it, like give it like behind the scenes and stuff like that, just to like, I don't know, share our studio or like share our
It's
process.
like
And
it's definitely a conscious choice. It's like that. I mean, that type of content just does well. Like you get a lot of eyes on it. But it's always in the end, it's always purely just something that we are at that moment super interested in, or we just want to like with like we did this thing with doing like these normal maps on like 3D characters that looks like drawing and stuff. And then we're like super like if we figured one of these things out, then like we are just overly excited for it for a week, and we just like fuck around with it the after if we don't have any work going on, and then it's like okay, well let's showcase to this to the world or whatever, and like make something with it
yeah.
using this the new technique. Yeah.
I mean, it
And it
makes
feels like I feel like the kind of like moment that it's kind of finished, or like a project is finished, or like if you start like I don't know, an animation or something, the moment that you feel like it's over or it's done with is when you just give it out to
Yeah.
people.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you're
it's
just
also
like, okay, here it
you
is,
need
see you
to
later.
you need to put a stop to yourself, and that helps.
Yeah,
Otherwise you can keep on going on the same
yeah,
hammering on the
Totally.
same thing.
Yeah, I feel the
Yeah.
and
same.
we
As soon
just,
as I post something, I can't touch it anymore. I'm like, well,
yeah,
it's
exactly,
done.
it's
Yeah.
So,
done.
so then how much
That's
of your
nice.
time is spent like experimenting and just like playing around versus like working on client stuff? Because it sounds like you're like making active time to just keep having fun, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's we're super lucky that like a lot of the times, like with client work, the people that come up with like crazy ideas, like really insane at times, and then it puts us in a position that we don't know how to approach it, so we have to figure it out ourselves, or figure out a completely different way of approaching it. So that already helps with the experimentation. So a lot of time we're actually forced to experiment because we're like, fuck, we don't know how, like super early on, and we're like, we don't know how to rig things. So like, okay, we have to figure this out in a different way, like
it's crazy
that
rigs.
is still this day happens like a lot, that people are like, we want you guys to do something like this, and then you're sitting in a Zoom call with someone, and they're going like, and then the plane goes like this, and you're like, oh, okay, okay. And
Oh
then
gosh.
we're like, yeah, yeah, that's cool, it's gonna happen. And then we close down the webcam, and then we're like, okay, how are we actually going to do this plane thing that
Yeah.
we're talking about?
I think like having all like almost like not knowing everything about 3D is like super exciting for us. But it's
Hmm.
great because 3D is such a broad industry, or like a broad kind of like how do you call that? Like a
Broad thing.
broad thing. That like there's so much to discover. So we use it in jobs, but then also in between the jobs, and we'll just schedule it. Like say if we have a week in between a job, which like right this week, let's try this thing that we saw, or let's maybe try and make a crayon shader or something, like
The
just we'll
crayon
just
shader is
schedule
really
it.
cool, by the way. So okay,
It's
a
very cool.
question I have is like, I'm an independent artist too, and usually people when they hire me, they come to me with like a set budget and a timeline. Like
Hmm.
when you're because if you have a lot of experimentation, you don't even know how you're going to accomplish it. Is that like very stressful to like get all of that in the first stage to like figure it out? Or do you say like, we need a little bit like here's how things work with us. Like And like the other thing for me is like a stop motion animator. If the director or the client comes back after I've animated something, I'm like, well, now I have to go back to scratch and either like resculpt this physically, or we come up with some other solution. But your style is so crazy and zany and weird. I'm sure like you're like, I don't even know what this plain thing is. And then maybe the client comes back and they're like, no, I didn't mean like this. I meant like this. Like how do you like mix all of those things into like a client budget and schedule?
Yeah, good question. We tend to kind of approach it depending on like I mean, I guess it's always the same with everyone, right? The depending on what the type of job it is. So if it is a job where you'll have a director coming in asking to do kind of crazy stuff like that, we will make sure that we cater more time for animation. And we say, look, we're going to have to block out this time. We're going to maybe lose a bit of the concept stage, but because the concept stage for us, now we know how to VR sculpt, and like we do everything in VR sculpting. So even the sketches are VR sculpted, so they actually look pretty. We do a lot of renderings that look pretty close to the final thing before they even get to the final thing. So what tends to happen is we send over the sketches in VR sculpting. The client's already like, "Oh my God, we're already there."
This is so new and fresh and interesting.
Yeah,
exactly what we hired you for.
Exactly, done.
Great.
Or they hate it, or whatever, we can change it. But because we're so fast at that, it means that we can just sort of quickly get our ideas together. It's also an excuse because we're really terrible at drawing. So
well, I mean, if
we
in
just do
terms
it
of
like
in
that.
terms of like budget things, like the amount of budget just depends like how much time we can spend on it in the end. So
Yeah,
like if there's a very, very small budget, I mean, like then we just force ourselves. Like first it has to be reasonably small, I guess. But if it's like really small, but we really love the idea and like we excites us and we already have like everything in our heads, then like we're also willing to, look, this would normally take us like 3 weeks. Like we could try to do it in 1 week. Like we can't promise it, but like we can find some kind of hacks to get a similar result. But yeah, in a less
without compromising too much on like
without
quality.
compromising too much. Yeah, so that's a lot of times like we're just, yeah, if people are like, oh, sorry, we only have this, then it's like, oh, okay, let's just see what we can do within that budget and like try to just get, yeah. So there's always, you have to be super flexible, I guess.
Yeah.
So in the past, you guys have done like illustrations. You're like most recently doing like animation. Like where do you want to take this? Where do you want to take Yonk essentially? Because what you described to me was like we're having fun experimenting and coming up with a really cute, not cute, maybe creepy, sometimes cute, creepy, unique, interesting style, and people have naturally come and been drawn to us. But like, you were so intentional about starting your own studio. Do you have future plans? Like, you've like only been a couple of years doing this. Do you want to see like a Yonk? What's the Yonk future that is in store for the whole world?
Good question. I mean, there's definitely some things we want to tick off our list that we haven't done yet. For instance, we want like animations in longer and short form, actually doing sort of story narrative, animation directing.
This is Vicky, what she wants for the future. No,
is like I'm good.
No, it's the same.
No, it's the
But
same.
it's like I think we both like we have like a blast actually with like client stuff. Like we really, really love doing it. Like it's so fun.
Which is kind of surprising, I guess, because a lot of people, do that stuff to get through and do their personal stuff. But we find it really interesting when someone gives us a brief and we're like, oh yeah, we didn't think of that.
Yeah, it's so super that's super fun that we want to continue that like for as long as we can. But then at the same time, we also obviously have the dream of like what Vicky mentioned, do the long form or like a longer animation and just do the whole shebang. That would be super fun to do. And then I also that's me, but like I guess that's both of us. But like you're more into the animation. I really want to do the young game, like just have that finished as well. But like I feel like we would always just be a studio, and it can be like an advertising branding studio thing, I guess. But I feel we could also just easily just do at the same time, or just switch our focus for a year or something to a game or like a long form animation. That would be, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say our future is flexible.
Do you you said, you know, you mentioned the studio a bunch of times. Also, the game is a really cool idea. Your style is like perfect for like a gloopy game.
Yeah, right.
Do you see yourself hiring more people to join Yonk at some point? Yeah,
We'd
okay.
love to. We'd love to. We'd love to, like, I mean, and then Yonk will naturally change, right? Because the more people we add, the style will get more and more different. But I think we're really open to that. We're like
Yeah.
super open to.
We get like a lot of intern requests, and like before we didn't really feel comfortable yet because we didn't have the space. Now we have the studio for years, and now we have the space for someone. But now it's this year has been, I mean, definitely less busy than the previous year. So it's like I don't want someone to sit there for 3 months and don't have to give them the actual experience of like working with clients and stuff.
Just put them in VR world and
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's true.
put them in like an office simulator.
But like
I don't know.
this
that's
is our
definitely
studio in VR.
But it's definitely something we want to work towards, to have like
Okay.
multiple people like grow Yonk as a studio, because I think the mindset we can just share with anyone and could just be, yeah, shared. But for now, gonna have our first intern in
Next year.
January,
Oh
but he's a
wow.
musician. He's a jazz musician.
He's a jazz
Wow.
musician.
And
Cool.
also,
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's a big milestone.
right.
Where,
shouts
sorry, your
out to
studio is
Stefan.
currently in the Netherlands? It's in
Yeah,
it's
The
in
Hague, yeah.
Hague, yeah. So what just like a random, maybe one of my last questions. What is the animation market and industry like in the Netherlands? Like, you know, is there a lot of opportunity, or are you creating, you know, with
Would love to
part of this?
know.
We'd love to.
You'd love
We
to
have
know.
No,
We have no
we have
clue.
we feel like I mean, I know there's an animation festival called, it used to be called
used to
Play
be called, oh, Kaboom.
Boom.
Yeah, and
Stop it.
we haven't been, and also,
We need
but
to
like,
go.
yeah,
When
because
we're
like we don't know a lot of
Wow, okay.
people.
we know, I mean, we know
You know,
a couple of independent people. Like Ava Kramers is here. I don't know if you
yeah,
know Ava Kramers. And there's a guy called,
ugly, stupid, honest.
yeah, Ugly Stupid Honest is here, who uses AI, really cool. Sorry, we just spit
Yeah,
out
no,
But
names.
it's
like, there's
fine.
not. But like
I'm
this,
kind of
Yeah,
but
like,
like for example, jobs wise, we never work with Dutch people, and we know a lot of people here in The Hague, and like for some reason, we worked maybe once or twice for a Dutch thing.
I mean, it's kind of, I don't know. I just don't know if the industry is really here. It feels like we're in some sort of weird bubble, but it's kind of nice as well, in a weird way. I don't know. Maybe we just need to
It's
discover,
Netherlands is more about graphic design.
yeah, graphic design and art.
okay, okay. Well,
I
maybe
feel,
this is a new
yeah.
thing coming up. Who knows?
Maybe it's a new thing, or maybe we'll just discover a load of people now after
Surprise!
this.
You go to that animation festival and there's 10,000 people in
And
the crowd. Like, where have you been?
Yeah.
that's what's gonna
Um,
happen.
is there any, you know, as maybe we're wrapping up here, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to share still? Or if not, do you have any final words?
Oh, final words. Or do you have anything that you want to touch upon? No.
That was a weird joke.
No, I don't think I want to touch upon anything, but final words, I guess, just like,
Thanks for listening to
thanks
us
for listening
and
to
letting
us.
us talk. You know, a lot of people let us
Yeah.
talk a lot.
Oh, it's
And
super
we are,
enjoyable. I love to, you
we,
know, hear what's going on behind the scenes of like really, really cool art. So this is
Thank you. We also likewise, we're super big fans of
yeah,
what you
we're
do.
super
So
big fans.
oh,
yeah,
thank
and
you.
we're hyped for this game you were
Yeah,
creating.
please keep us up to date with the game.
Okay,
We
okay.
want to know.
Well, it's not going to come out for quite a while, so I can't really
Okay.
share anything. But when it comes out,
Oh,
I'll be
When-
sharing it.
we'll be waiting. We'll be
You'll be
waiting.
waiting? Okay, oh no.
We're gonna leak
No
the
pressure.
we're gonna leak the trailer like
Like
Rockstar.
Grand Theft Auto.
All right, well, Victoria and Niels, thank you so much for coming on the chat. It's been an absolute pleasure. You know, I love your style, and it's been great to get to know what goes on behind it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for us.
Swingers.
And if you're listening and you want to, you know, check out Yonk or get in touch with Victoria or Niels, you can do so by checking out their website, which is yonk.online, or going to their Instagram, which is yonk.online as well. And I'm gonna pointing to the bottom of the video. I'm going to include those links in the description of this chat. So please go and check them out. And that's all for now. So thank you so much. And thanks for listening. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Willem Mendo and the graphics by Luhan Wang. I encourage you to look them up if you've enjoyed their work.